From NFL quarterback to Hollywood to the mayor's office, and now behind the mic at KXEX, this is the Alan Autry Show. No retreat.
And so, my fellow Americans, ask not what your country can do for you, ask what you can do for your country.
Mr. Gorbachev, tear down this wall.
What the hell's going on out here? Everybody's grabbing out there. Nobody.
That the only thing we have to fear is fear itself.
Today, I consider myself the luckiest man on the face of the earth.
I'm not fearing any man. Mine eyes have seen the glory of the coming of the Lord.
So, 5 seconds left in the game. Do you believe in miracles? Yes! Unbelievable. We are live. We are live. Thank
Rock in town. Talk Radio 1550 KXEX. Call Alan now. 559-899-1550.
Hey, welcome to Alan Autry No Retreat. I'm Alan Autry, and as always, I'm honored and humbled to have you join us today. We got a lot to go over today. Some were calling it Joe Biden's Hail Mary speech. We're going to talk about that a little bit. Did he complete the pass for the winning touchdown and turn around a presidency that's headed to the toilet? Or did something else happen? If you saw it, I think this is simply a rhetorical question. We know what happened. My goodness. Oh, my. Anyway. But first, we're going to start off with a little art. Autry's random thoughts. Excuse me. Just things that hit me in my life as I go along, and I'll see something or hear something or get a thought, and I think, hey, I'd like to share that with folks that watch the show or listen to the show. It goes no deeper than that, and I had a few of those last couple of days. Just want to share them with you. I saw something highly unusual I'd never seen before, ever, and that was a Starbucks shutting down at 5 p.m. I was there out north, a very vibrant place economically here in Fresno. Heretofore, Starbucks, they're doing well, always busy, and was pretty busy at 5 o'clock that day. I had a little meeting outside with a couple of friends, and then they come out, started taking the umbrellas down and closing the place up. And my friends said, hey, you guys closing up? And the young lady said, yes. And the guy goes, my friend goes, why? And he said, well, we can't get anybody to come in. And wow, when you can't get a worker to come into a Starbucks, you know something is up. And it got Starbucks' attention. Apparently, this is something that didn't just happen in Fresno, happening all over the country. I say apparently because just about a day or two later, Starbucks came out and changed their policy and said that you do not have to be vaccinated. They had followed the orders from the White House, the CDC, and saying that you had to be vaccinated if you wanted to work at Starbucks. Well, they did a 180, reversed it. I said, we're no longer going to do that. And you know, when that kind of 180 happens, it's an old follow the money. It had hit their bottom line big time, as it has the airline industry, as it has healthcare workers, hospitals all over the country, just pretty much every business that you could think of that doesn't depend totally on remote workers, which in the whole scheme of things is very few workers here in America. It's still, you get up and you go to work at that work site. So I thought that was very telling. because I think I think it's good. I think it's very good for this reason. This Omicron thing, I call it the Omicron. It clearly, from the get-go, when it first appeared in South Africa, was not a quote-unquote serious disease in comparison to everything that was out there, the Delta variant, even a really bad case of the flu. And I'll take it a step further. Many of the scientists said it's really not as bad as a really bad cold. And South Africa said, again, that's where the first reported case emerged from. All the scientists there and the doctors said, listen, we haven't even hospitalized one individual here from Omicron. Well, I guess that wasn't enough for the CDC and President Biden and all those who live and live in a culture of fear. Well, you know what? I don't know if they live in a culture of fear. I think they know deep inside the score on all of this. And the whole thing was a huge overreaction. And before you go getting on me, I'm not saying the nearly 1 million Americans that have died from COVID is not a serious thing. It absolutely is. I lost friends that COVID was a contributing factor to it. But we also find out now clearly by the CDC and Dr. Fauci that those numbers were skewed. If you came in, so you were in a car wreck, or you came with and you died from the injuries of that car wreck, say a massive brain injury, and you tested for COVID, because they test everyone that comes in there, the cause of death was COVID. And he finally owned up. This is something that had been talked about for months and months earlier, people questioning the data, and all it got you was being canceled off of Twitter, Facebook, and any place else. But Fauci came forward and said, yeah, this is what's been happening, especially with children. The hospitalizations. If a child comes in for a broken arm and tests positive for COVID, they put down as the cause of hospitalization COVID. But we clearly see this pandemic turning around. I feel very comfortable in saying that. If you do a little bit of research on pandemics, epidemics, and pandemics, Spanish flu, come back to the Black Plague, go on to the swine flu, to the H1N1 flu, over the course of the last 20, 30, 40, 50 years, you see this COVID, although different in its structure and clearly did have gain of function work done on it, because it operated different in many ways than a COVID virus before. But in other ways, it did mimic the viruses of the past, of the COVID virus, the coronaviruses. And what we're seeing is this mass immunity, what they call herd immunity. I don't quite like that term. A bunch of people call them a herd. I grew up where a herd was cows, horses. But anyway, herd immunity clearly is starting to take root with this virus, this coronavirus, and all of its mutations, and in particular the Omicron. Did they, overreact at the beginning? That's okay if you overreact at the start, the first week. But in that first week, if you get irrefutable data that this virus is not the original COVID, it's surely not the Delta variant, which was worse than the original COVID, in terms of the damage it can do to you. There comes a time when people start doing a little homework. They start listening to other sources of information. They start listening to these very intelligent scientists and doctors that have been banned and canceled, and they go find them. They go, wait a minute, that makes a lot of sense. And you see the numbers of COVID hospitalizations, 80% are the Omicron. So basically the Delta and the original, if not gone completely away, have tremendously been reduced. So there's an old saying, you need to stop talking before they stop listening. And I think the CDC and these people on the far left and Joe Biden kept saying that this Omicron was as bad as the original virus. We had to keep locking people down. You had to mandate businesses over 100 employees to mandate that those employees take the virus or don't come to work. People have stopped listening, and that's good. I just came from a gym in The local mandate here is you still wear the mask. You see people, they're not enforcing it. They're not enforcing it at Starbucks. One of the staunchest supporters of the Biden campaign, they ran for president, and supporters of Biden as president has been the folks around Starbucks. The administration says jump. They say how high. You don't question them at all. Just yes, sir. Yes, ma'am. Right on it. And now they have said, you know what? We just can't keep marching to this. We'll march to real science, but we're not going to march to nonsense. And that's what this overreaction has become. It's sad because the CDC and Dr. Fauci is an institution and a doctor. The dadgummit we want to believe. We want to believe. But I was in government here in the city of Fresno. I was a mayor for 8 years. I spent a lot of time going and trying to hustle resources for the city of Fresno and the Central Valley, in Sacramento, and in Washington, D.C. And you find out very quickly how politicized it all is. And if these folks in office, the vast majority of them, now you'll find some ones that want to make a difference that are real honest. They're out there. But by and large, you see a tremendous amount of these elected officials that are just going to embrace whatever it is that's out there they feel is going to enhance their ability to stay in power. And when I saw that the CDC, and in my ignorance, I didn't spend much time on the CDC, on the website prior to the pandemic. I don't think many people were. It's become so much a part of our lexicon and part of our conversation now, Fauci and the CDC, that, it's the layperson now knows quite a bit about that organization. But I didn't know that it was a government-run body by the federal government. It purports to be independent, but it's not. It's an arm of the federal government. And being so, it is very susceptible to being politicized. And it became politicized. My suggestion was meaning some folks in Congress, this president, the next president, need to take the steps to let the CDC become a truly independent institution. What would that look like? You know what? I would settle for a structure somewhat like the Fed, although the Fed isn't. The head of the Fed is appointed by President. I believe that's the way it's done by Congress. They do have a level of autonomy that is kind of like the Supreme Court. Supreme Court justices are appointed, but appointed for life. And once they get in, the theory was the founding fathers thought that if you take away term limits once they're appointed for life, they don't have to worry about being reelected, and they will, in turn, do what is morally right most of the time. At least that was the thinking here. I think something like that has to happen with the CDC, because I think they've been damaged so much that people have just really lost trust in not just the CDC, but in particular Dr. Fauci, who has been elevated by this administration as the go-to guy, as basically the god of health. And unfortunately, he started out a very humble guy, but I think he started reading his press clippings and started to believe he is the god of the CDC and the god of science. In fact, he went so far as to say not too long ago that if you go against me, if you have a opinion other than you accept an opinion other than mine in terms of this virus, then you are attacking science. If you go against me, Dr. Fauci, you go against science. Whew. And that's a pretty awesome, bold statement. And I think people have pretty much had it. I think for the good of the country, it would be nice for Dr. Fauci. He's 81 years old. And I'm not going to be one of these guys that calls him names. I'm sure in the totality, he's done a good job. And when I say that, I get my brethren on the right just coming at me left and right. How can you even say that? Well, pretty easy. No, very few people are 100% evil or incompetent, or 100% brilliant and never make a mistake. The only one who never made a mistake and was sinless, they hang him on the cross. And by the same token, when I'm saying what I'm saying now, that for the good of the country, Anthony Fauci should probably step down, I get my brethren on the left coming out. So speaking your mind and being truthful to your own self sounds good when you talk about it. Be your own person, be your own man, be your own woman, chart your own path, be independent, say what you mean and mean what you say. Don't worry about what people think about you. Just say what you feel. That sounds good. I try to do that, but I tell you, it can get lonely in that position when you don't. You're not getting hammered just by one side, but by both sides. But a buddy of mine told me that I respect immensely. He said, when you get it from both sides, you're probably on the right path. If you get it from both sides, that's the way this world is right now. It's a zero-sum game. Either you believe like I do, or you're not even on my list. You're not my friend anymore. Don Lemon, CNN, just came out and said that not too long ago. Said he's got friends he's had for a long time, but because they support some of Trump's policies, he can't be around them anymore. Now, I'm not just picking on Don Lemon. There's people on the right. The same thing. You say something good about Biden, or you think that maybe he's done a little something right, man, I don't be around you. And we've got to get away from that. I grew up in an era, and I know many people watching right now online and listening on radio. Older folks, we remember a time where you could disagree without being disagreeable. Where there was debate going on in Washington. Sometimes, real heated debate. But they didn't cross the line like this. They didn't, Reagan didn't mark Tip O'Neill off his party list, and Tip O'Neill wasn't afraid to be seen at a restaurant with Ronald Reagan trying to do the business of the people. People wanted to see that. They wanted to see adversaries together. People still. They want to see Nancy Pelosi sit down with Donald Trump. They want to see Chuck Schumer sit down with Mitch McConnell. They do. Now, these hardened, partisan, poisoned folks that are out there on both sides of the spectrum, they don't, because it's that zero-sum game, our way or the highway. But I don't think you can move forward as an individual, that mindset, and I certainly don't think you can move forward collectively as a country with that mindset. And I think we're living proof of that right now. We have to find some way, get out of this and start coming together, working together, staying together, so we get this country back on track. This is Alan Autry, No Retreat. When we come back, we're going to go over that press conference a little bit. And, wow. Oh, is that the Bonanza theme? I love you, Jose. Crank that sucker up as we go to break. Dad, burn it, Paul. That's my little hoss intention. We'll be right back. Oh, social media folks, when I'm bouncing around on that, you can't hear it. I'm not going nuts. Well, I'm reminded of what Waylon Jennings said one time.
Hey,
he said,
they could hear it.
What's that?
They could hear
it.
Oh,
they heard Bonanza?
Yeah.
Oh, that's great. Yeah, Waylon Jennings said, I've always been crazy, but it's kept me from going insane. For some reason, I get that, what Waylon said there. And I think a lot of you all understand that as well. All right. We'll talk about the Hail Mary when we come back. I'm going to look at a few messages here. Affect the rest of my day here. It's a little warm in here. Am I sweating through yet? Oh, thanks, Jose. Turn the air conditioning on. Oh, my goodness. My wife just got her hair done, and she's ready for me to pick her up. Ooh. My show or my wife? She'll understand. Oh, man. I want to take this chance to give a shout out to Justin, if I haven't already. No, I just have it on my notes. Young guy there at the gym said he watches this or listens to the show every day on KXEX 1550. Young guy, mid-20s, good-looking young man, very respectful, works there at the gym, and just made a point to come over and say, Mr. Autry, I listen to your show every day. I love it. And thank you, Justin, if you're listening or watching now or tuning in on the archives later on. Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
One minute.
You're listening to the Alan Autry Show on the best talk in town. Talk Radio 1550 KXEX. Call Alan now. 559-899-1550.
Hey, welcome back to Alan Autry No Retreat. One last thing, at least for today, on the COVID front. Did you see in the United Kingdom, Boris Johnson, who got a very bad case of COVID, by the way, it turned him from macho to mush in terms of how they approached the United Kingdom. They became one of the most oppressive countries in terms of shutdowns all over Europe. And there was some very, very harsh shutdowns. He didn't go quite as far as Australia, but it was tough. And we have some friends over there, and it was as bad as reported in terms of how the shutdowns were handled there. But Boris came out yesterday and said, it's all over. Turn out the lights. You can go outside whenever you want to. You can go into a business, whatever business, a bar, whenever you want to. And by the way, you don't have to wear your mask. That was a huge, huge thing for him to say. And I guess he was in the House of Commons. I saw the clip, and when he said that, it just erupted in applause. So UK has now become a free nation and joins the free state of Florida of allowing you to just go about your life. Doesn't that sound good? Just go about your life. You're free. Just take a moment to listen. Somebody tell you, you're free. You live in a free country. You can go where you want to go, whenever you want to go there. And as long as you are respectful to everybody else and don't break the laws, not these made-up COVID laws, I mean real laws. You're a law-abiding citizen. You can go anywhere you want to. Man, that's nice. And I just feel, I may regret these words, but I feel like the country, is starting to turn around. You see these packed stadiums on the sporting events, coming up some great playoff games. You don't see masks around. And here's the important thing. You don't see this super spreader data being tracked back to any of those big, huge stadium events. Remember, if you gathered more than 5 or 10 people, you were in trouble. It was like 50, 60, 70, sometimes 80,000 people there for 3 hours, breathing on each other, and no super spreader event has happened. That, I think, is very telling. And I think sports, in particular MMA, who was the first sport to bring us back to some sort of normalcy. But again, and I tell you, I got to tip my hat to Kyrie Irving. Jose, Kyrie Irving's the basketball player. You know Kyrie Irving, right? Boston Celtics. No, not Boston. Brooklyn Nets. And he says, I'm just not going to, I don't believe in it. It's my body. I don't want you jabbing stuff in me that I don't want. And I own my body. You don't own my body. This is his position. And he stood by it. He gets to play some games on the road in cities that will allow an unvaccinated player to play, but he's not back. Here's the same guy who, for a long time, said he thought the world was flat. I thought that was a joke when I heard it, but it wasn't. But he's since rescinded that. But you got to kind of admire an individual that says, I know I'm being docked $400,000, $500,000 a game, something to that effect. But this means more to me to stand up for this. And you just got to admire, compare that to the way LeBron James conducts himself in terms of money first above everything, including the exploitation and downright genocide of people who make your tennis shoes over in China and won't lift a finger to hold China accountable. But that is a whole other 2, 3, 4, 5, or 6 shows that I could talk about on that. But hey, again, before we get to the speech, New York City breaking news. They just, a little girl and NYPD officer have just been wounded. Latest show of violence there in New York City. Eric Adams has his work cut out for him, and he needs to get to work on it. But now, just halfway through January in New York City, we're seeing a 25% increase in crime compared to the previous January. Wow. They're not getting the message. This is a call out, obviously, to Eric Adams, the criminal element. And I hear a lot of people say, and I embrace this to a certain degree, that anybody who would become a hardened criminal, you can look back at how they were raised, the situation they were born into, the gosh awful things that they had experienced from a very early age. And I've always said a criminal is created long before his or her first crime. And I believe that. But you get to a point where, sadly, to rehabilitate that is nearly impossible with some people. The mindset has been shaped for so long. You have what they call a hardened criminal. And as much as my heart breaks for those hardened criminals and how easily my life could have went the direction of theirs. We don't get to pick the circumstances we're born in. We don't get to pick the people who raise us. We don't get to pick the influences, the neighborhoods. It's just, it's left to destiny, fate. And my heart breaks for those people. But when I raised my right hand as a mayor, and I believe absolutely made that declaration to protect the city against all enemies, foreign and domestic, and even as a private citizen, I hold on to another principle that coincides with my heartfelt empathy and compassion for those that have become a hardened criminal. And that is my commitment and loyalty and dedication to law-abiding citizens, innocent people that many times are hurt or even killed by the hardened criminal. Because as much as we don't, and we have all these programs, this is what happened. It's happening in L.A., it's happening in San Francisco, it's happening in New York, happening in Chicago. These DAs are letting hardened criminals go free after some horrendous crimes, murder, rape. And you say, Alan, no, that's not happening. Look it up. Yes, it is. They've kind of had it down in L.A. There's a recall effort for Gascon. A society cannot sustain itself unless you have the gumption and the will to remove the hardened criminals from the street and put them where they belong, which is in prison. Now, I'm against capital punishment if you had a situation where you had life imprisonment, prison for crimes, for violent crimes, with no possibility of parole. But some crimes are so egregious and so horrible that if you put the possibility of parole into the mix, I have to be against it. And I have to support capital punishment. But here's the bottom line, and this is going to upset some people. Because as mayor, I funded programs to help folks that are in a life of crime to get out of life of crime. I want to give them every chance I could. And I think by any measure, we did that in 8 years. Went there and beyond. We're trying to help that. We also, I call it hammer and hope. Hope in one hand, hammer in the other. And, you want to change your ways and become a productive citizen. Me, as the mayor of Fresno at that time and that administration, will help you to the extent we could to do that. But if you chose to live out your violent crime on the people of Fresno, myself as mayor, our police chief, and our city in general will be the most inhospitable place on the face of the earth. We won't tolerate it. That's my promise and commitment to the law-abiding people. You put me in a position to make a choice, I'm on a side with the law-abiding people and protect them at all costs. Because what you find out, and we had a lot of the criminal element decide, I want to turn my life around. There was a percentage that did. And my heart feels good about that because we were part of giving them that opportunity. And the community came and rallied around that and gave opportunities to folks out of prison that may have had a record that are hard to employ. People stepped up in businesses to give them that second, third, and sometimes even fourth chance. But there is an element that they don't want to get a job. They don't want to go back to school to learn a skill. They don't want to get clean from their addiction. They want to do crime. I know that's harsh to say that, but there's an old saying, the truth will set you free, but first it'll make you miserable. And that's the miserable truth. There is a criminal element. Doesn't want to get, if they're on drugs, many of them are, they don't want to get well. They want to stay on drugs. Hey, offer them a job, they don't want the job. Hey, let's go back to school, get you a skill. You say you don't have any skills. They don't want to go back to school. They want to go out in the streets and they want to do crime. And those are the hardened criminals we have to have zero tolerance for. In this city, a city of Fresno, and quite honestly, I'm not seeing it from our mayor and police chief. And that's hurt me here in terms of some friends and them. They've kind of alienated me out the door. We've offered them on the show. They won't come. Which to me, I find very telling. The police officers I know that grew up in the police department, they're the ones that run into the fire, not away from it. They go into the line of fire when there's some crazy guy with a gun and trying to hurt innocent people. They go there and take them on. Yet they're afraid to come on this show and take on some criticism. It's beyond me how this is happening. This is not just here in Fresno, all over the country. You're seeing police chiefs and mayors running away from accountability, not addressing it, demonizing whoever comes after them. And that is heartbreaking for me because it's just unbecoming of law enforcement in general. You're different. Come in here. Tell me where I'm wrong in my criticisms of how law enforcement is being applied from the mayor's office and police chiefs, not just here, but around the country. You see people like Alex Villanueva getting tough on crime. Margaret Mims, tough on crime. Lisa Smitkamp comes in here, not afraid to say, we're not going to tolerate violent crime and we're coming after you. You know why you hear so much about them? You hear about Villanueva down there in L.A.? Because very few are speaking out about like that. They're afraid. They're afraid this woke far left are going to, picket in front of their city hall or picket in front of the police department. They're afraid that one of their officers is going to go out. There's going to be a confrontation, and that officer, to save him or herself, there's an officer involved shooting. They're scared to death that person that gets wounded or killed is going to be a person of color. And I'm worried that anybody would be hurt with an officer involved shooting of any color. Yeah, I worry about that, but you can't stop that from you going out and upholding the law and getting hardened criminals off the street. Now, I hadn't planned on, going, but this thing I look up at the monitor, and this crime, this war on crime, and again, when I use phrases like that, I get it, especially from the left. Don't use those incendiary words, war on crime. Alan, come on. Even my friends on people in the public, in law enforcement. Oh, don't the war on drugs. The war on drugs. Don't you? You know, I will be the first one to say that have to be very selective when you use that word war. That's it's like the word racist. You have to be very careful when you use that word. You better be dang sure that it truly applies to what you're talking about, or it's an insult to people that lost their lives in wars, or people that have been victim of racism, or true racism and true wars. So it goes through my mind before I use words. I choose my words. It may not seem like, but I do. I choose my words carefully. But we have to have and realize that we have to have a renewed war on crime. Why? Because if we don't fight this increase in crime, this deluge of crime, this tsunami of crime that's emerging all over this country, if we don't fight it with the same passion that you fight a war, we will continue to lose and people will continue to die needlessly. Like the young lady pushed in front of the subway car in New York. Like the little UCLA graduate working her way through life at the furniture store to come in and gets killed. You could go senseless acts. For goodness sake, George Floyd's niece just got shot. Thank goodness, looks like she's going to survive. A little 4-year-old niece. You have to realize we're at war with the hardened criminal element in this country. And like I said, if we fight it with less than that passion of a war, we're going to lose. Because you know what? The hardened criminal element has clearly declared war on law-abiding America. You can see it, the smash and grabs out there. And you say, well, you missed a smash and grab. That's a far cry from a violent crime. Let me tell you, that's where it starts. There's gateway crimes. The next one's going to be more severe, more severe, more severe. And you start by getting with the gang activity, 80% here in Fresno, for example, because you're asking, okay, Alan, what would you do? What I've said on the show many times, I don't understand why it's not being done. We did it when I was mayor, and we had a reduction of crime to 50-year lows. You know where the gang shot callers are. You go get them. They violated their parole. You can make a case against them. You have a DA ready to prosecute them. You go round them out like we did when I was, I hate to say that, in the 2000s, and you put them on the curb, handcuffed, and not let somebody say, well, that's demeaning, that's dehumanizing, and have the guts to say, well, you may think so, but I think the person they just put a bullet through its head is pretty dehumanizing as well. I think that innocent victim, that little kid that was killed by that individual, that's a little dehumanizing as well. So I think we can put up with the optics of a murderer on a curb in handcuffs and not be scarred for life. To me, that sends a message of comfort. And you know what? It sends a message of comfort in the neighborhoods where that individual came from. Because it's in your poor neighborhoods, in primarily minority neighborhoods, it's just a fact that their families want their kids to be able to get up and go to school safely. They don't want to have their kids sleep in a bathtub because they're afraid about stray bullets coming through the window. They don't want to live like that. You know, most of the gang members don't cause the crime. It's a small element within that gang. And the police department knows where 80-90% of those people are and who they are. That's the tragedy about this whole thing. Something that could be prevented has not been done. We know what to do. We're just not doing it. All right, we're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we're going to talk about the speech, the Hail Mary. I said the last break is what we're going to talk about, but this issue of crime is so very important that, quite honestly, we really can't talk about it enough until it gets turned around. This is Alan Autry, No Retreat. We'll be right back.
Hey, Guillermo's here. He's saying if you want him to join you.
Yeah, tell Guillermo to get in here. Yeah.
Right.
Guillermo Marino, your show yesterday was stellar. Stella. You just kind of took the speech item by item and broke it down about how.
That reminds me. Let me go get my notes.
Yeah, it was. You just methodically tore it, broke it down. That's why you don't let him out of the basement.
Don't rob a bank with him.
I have to tip my hat to his advisor. I thought he had some of this silliest, naive, and he does. That's one thing even they knew was going to.
Yeah. Testing.
It's. For the good of the country, you would. That's why he's not going to make it.
He's going to make it.
He's not.
He's going to make it.
Mark my.
Rand Paul thinks he's going to make it.
He's not.
He was on with it.
Democrats cannot afford this. They cannot afford it. And if there was an issue, all they can hope for is for him to get shot. Like Reagan. like Reagan. Reagan couldn't get anything through. You don't understand this. The Democratic, they controlled the House. They weren't going to get anything. And then he got shot, and he waved from the body, and all of a sudden, the people were on his side.
Yeah.
And I'm not going to say that in public because they'd be all over. But I mean, outside of something, he doesn't have the know-how. He doesn't have strength. He doesn't have a team, and they can't afford it to keep getting worse and worse and worse because then it starts. You get further glimpse into this woke agenda that's being hammered away out there. You find out more and more who they're running scared of.
30 seconds.
And then you're saying, man, will we ever get these independents back?
Yeah.
Will we ever get these suburban houses? If the event is traumatic enough, you never get somebody. You have a bad meal at a restaurant, okay, you might go back again. But you get food poisoning.
I like that.
Yeah, you're not going to go back there.
I like that.
10 seconds.
I love that.
Oh, true, right?
That's good.
Blind squirrel gets an acorn. Hey.
Turn out the lights. The party's over.
Oh, sing it, Willie.
They say that all
good things must.
You're listening to the Alan Autry Show on the best talk in town. Talk Radio 1550 KXEX. Call Alan now. 559-899-1550.
And welcome back to Alan Autry No Retreat. We're going to break down this speech. We only have a few minutes left, and I've been joined by the boss again, Guillermo Marino. So happy to have you with us, Guillermo. Let's get right to it, and hopefully you can join us on Free for All Friday, and we can continue this. I don't know your heavy schedule is going to allow you, but the invite's on the table.
Well, there you go. You know what? I might have to take you up on that.
Well, I hope so. Okay, you mentioned before the speech that this was kind of a Hail Mary.
Yeah.
Well, it's hard to throw a Hail Mary from your own 5-yard line. That's where this administration started from. So you probably only heaved it to about the 50. Most people, including me, think it went from a Hail Mary. It was a pick six, picked off, run back the other way for the team. What's your take, brother?
It wasn't what it was penned out to be. It was pretty disastrous for him, and I'm not saying that because I'm conservative, and it was bad. I thought he had a moment to really. He didn't do good. He didn't do amazingly bad.
Oh.
He didn't. I mean, he didn't flub. He found the podium. Okay, that would have been pretty bad. But it didn't really do anything. It was one of those things where it's not going to help him. It's definitely going to hurt his party. It's not going to hurt him. I think the American people are pretty much, they've made up their mind. That polling isn't going to get better. Nothing absent something like another pandemic or a foreign crisis. He's not going to get out of this. He knows it. His people know it. He mentioned the polls. I don't know how many times. And then he said, I don't believe the polls. I don't believe the polls.
Yeah.
And here's the other thing. When you know you're doing bad, you try to change it. If your wife tells you something, and I know your wife doesn't tell you because you're perfect. Alan Autry is perfect.
As long as I do what my wife says.
But maybe you do this. Maybe you do something that really irritates your wife, and you just keep doing it. And you say, you know what, wife? It'll get better if you just allow me to do what I'm currently doing.
Oh, that goes over well.
And that's exactly what he's saying. Hey, listen, the reason why things are bad is because I can't build back better.
Yeah.
The reason why things are bad are because Republicans are really mean. They were never this mean in my 20 bajillion year career, but now they're just mean. And did I mention how bad the Republicans are?
I disagree. I think it was an absolute unmitigated disaster if you are a Biden supporter. And again, I say that from a registered independent.
Yeah.
I want what's right for this country. I see things happen in China getting ready to go in Taiwan, Russia and Ukraine, inflation out of control. I like to be able to eat more than I want to be part of a partisan movement. And when you have inflation destroying paychecks of American families all over, no end in sight, you see so many things out of whack. And you see this individual get up and clearly, be it age, policies, lack of a team behind him, so many things wrong that I think, he lost, he's dropped in support and independence by 30%.
Mm-hmm.
And you let that, sometimes you can get people back if you say the right things, do the right things, and do a little mea culpa. But you have a press conference like this, and that resistance and that non-support becomes calcified. There's kind of nothing you can do to get it back. And I think all the things that people were worried about Joe Biden, not just Republicans, but his own supporters, was in full display. It was unsettling. It wasn't funny in my book. It was extremely unsettling. It's obvious he's got cognitive issues.
Just minor incursion in his brain.
Well, yeah, for example, he's been on the Foreign Relations Committee. 50 years he was on that Foreign Relations Committee. He knows that Joe Biden, Senator Biden, would know you never give the go-ahead and say to a country, oh, you can take some, you can take one bite of the apple, and we'll be value for value in our response. Is you never give away what you're going to do. You know there's a patent answer to that, and it's very simple. To the answer, I would strongly encourage Vladimir Putin to make no incursion whatsoever into Ukraine. This has to be This has to be rectified diplomatically. You got to do that. To say that, and then to say you that he didn't overpromise, that he outperformed.
Yeah.
These things but that minor encouragement, it's like, major, and Ukraine immediately went ballistic. And this is from a CNN report. They did a live report. John King did. No, I think it was Jake Tapper after the speech from the correspondent in the Ukraine, and they asked for the Ukrainian response from this reporter. The reporter said it's just absolutely disbelief, shocked that by the Ukrainians that he would basically tell Putin that you got a free rein.
His staff really should have said, "Hey, we need to end this. We need to end this for our foreign policy." He probably gave way too much classified information, and that was the fourth question. This is what he said: "Hey, Russia is ready. America and NATO are not involved. Sanctions are not agreed by the EU." This is what he said. He said, Putin has never seen sanctions like this that I proposed. NATO will be united. Russia will be held accountable. But if they do what they say they're going to do, they do invade, they'll prevail." And I was like, he goes, they'll prevail. It'll come at a cost, but they'll win.
and each one of these gaffes, and if it's not a gaffe, they actually believe this. That's actually going to be the policy. The overpromise, and he says, well, I think I outperformed, rather than saying, hey, I know it's been a tough year where we got some things moving forward. I know it doesn't look like we're accomplishing, but we are, blah, blah, blah. But you said, no, I think I outperformed, and you think you have the strongest economy that you've had in 50 years. Then you say you can have a minor incursion, and we probably won't do any. There's 3 or 4 other things there that just on their own would spell absolute disaster in terms of a press conference. But the one on top of the other, and merely being able to stand up and then saying, if you give me a simple question, if you ask me an easy question, I'll give you a short answer.
Ew, that was something. Let's do a comparison here. Imagine if Trump were at that podium yesterday and he had said, listen, I've talked to all the advisors.
Bad Trump.
Putin, he could do a minor incursion because let me tell you, we're not ready for this. Imagine if Trump would have said he would have been okay with a minor incursion from Putin. Could you imagine the liberal media would have said, oh my, he's giving away the farm. This is horrible. But because Biden said it, it's somehow not a big deal. Here's the other thing. Let me ask you a question. Who is a quarterback right now in the NFL that you wish the team would have said, you know what? Hey, come on, cut him. You got to cut him. You got to move on. You got to move on. Which team in the NFL, and I hate to put you on the spot, but you got football knowledge. Which team just stayed with their quarterback too long?
Probably Baker Mayfield.
Baker Mayfield, okay.
Probably. I like Baker. I like his toughness, but that's honestly answer to your question. That's probably, and Sam Darnold.
Then Biden is the Democrats' Baker Mayfield. They're not going to pull him out. They know how bad it is, but they're going to roll with them. I mean, that's why when you said, hey,
Baker's a little bit better scrambler.
Yeah, he's tougher. But you get what I'm saying? They're not going to, Biden is going on, and he's got the cover from the media.
Yeah, I just think it's disastrous, and I would caution the Republicans before you start doing these victory laps. Obama reportedly had this statement. He says, don't ever underestimate Joe Biden's ability to, step things up. Well, don't underestimate the Republicans' ability to snatch defeat out of the jaws of victory. There's a long time before November.
Well said.
Play your cards right. But I do think he's in deep trouble with the independents, deep trouble with Hispanics. He's lost enough black support, Asian support.
Yeah.
And like we said before, he's an analogy that you happen to like. I say, you go in and you see this press conference and you hear him say things out loud that are so incoherent, so bad. They're trying to mull his way out of calling somebody who disagrees with this John Lewis Voting Rights Act as being Bull Connor or George Wallace or Jefferson Davis, and trying to get his way out of that. And you have the sound bites that show that you said what you said. But I think people, use the analogy, you eat at a restaurant and you have a bad meal, you might go back and give that restaurant a second chance. But you go to that restaurant, you get food poisoning, you're never going back there. This was food consuming this press conference. A lot of people got food poisoning. They got policy food poisoning from this president. I don't see any way that he gets it back. And if the Republicans play their cards right and truly be uniters, don't go out there going, well, when we get ours, we're going to do our January 6th commission. Let that thing implode. Now, we're going to talk about that tomorrow. Hopefully, you'll be able to join us.
I'll be here. Yeah,
that is. Don't do exactly what it is you vilify. It is a sham. So just let it go. Move forward with the business of the people. If the Republicans then discipline themselves, don't you think? Discipline yourself to be that policy-focused, good things for America party, and then you'll have the electorate for quite some time.
Yeah. Amen. Well said.
Folks, thank you so much for tuning in. God bless, love you, and good Lord willing to be here tomorrow, Free for All Friday. Hopefully Guillermo will be here, Kim will be here. We'll be talking about this speech a little bit more as well, some other stuff. Hopefully we can make it a little interesting. Love you, God bless you, and see you tomorrow. Bye-bye now.
Till then, who cares about the clouds if we're together?